Do you like the idea of getting into property development, but you perhaps don't know how to do it? Would you like to hear from someone today who's done exactly that? My name is Ritchie Clapson, and you're watching The Open Door Show. On today's show, I'm going to be talking to one of our students that joined us back in 2021. That's some time ago. Absolute pleasure to have him here in the studio. And I'm going to try and get out of him today about his journey, how he started, what he was doing before, where he's got to, what he's done, to hopefully share with you maybe some inspiration if you're thinking of getting into property development. Maybe you're in property development, perhaps struggling a little bit. Well, stay tuned. You're going to get some really good information today. Harvey Gora, welcome to our studio here on Open Door. Pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Richie.
Good to be here. Now, 2021, I think it was around February 2021. In my notes, I looked it up because I know it's some time ago that we met you. Where did we first meet? Do you remember how you came across us?
Well, time flies when you're having fun. Let me have a little think. So it was a friend who'd been introduced to propertyCEO who invited me onto a webinar just after lockdown.
Yeah.
And I think from an afternoon webinar with propertyCEO and yourselves, I went on to a 3-day webinar at the time.
Yeah.
And here we are, sort of 3-4 years on, and I'm still part of the Developers Club and propertyCEO.
And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have people coming back and seeing us. A lot of people disappear, and if you're one of those that disappeared, come back and see us. In fact, actually, literally just this week, we had a student come back who I hadn't seen for probably 2 years, 18 months, 2 years. And he's nearly finished his first project. So it was really, really good to have him back. My first memory of you, and you may not remember this, but I vividly remember this. And it was probably the 3-day fast track event that we run, which was the 3-day sort of introduction event to propertyCEO and introduction to development. And I remember you on your camera. And I remember, I think, Ranjit is your wife. I think the pastor of Baxford. And your son was on there. And your son, whose name, forgive me, I forget.
Garan,
that's it. Yeah. And he must have been about 6, 7, something like that. He came on camera, and I think we stopped the proceedings, and I went, "Who's that? What's your name?" And I had a chat with him on camera. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just, that's what I like about sometimes doing this. And it reminded me, I remember doing that one. Some people, they say, oh, don't do that, just ignore. And I see parents with their kids ignoring them. It reminded me it backfired on me once. I was actually doing a presentation and a lady had her young children, probably younger than your son, probably 3 or 4. I said, who's that? Of course, she opened the mic. And then they kept coming on, showing me all their different toys that they'd had. Did I promise that you'd buy your son an iPad or something like that? Was there some comment like that?
Yeah, something like that.
I think there might have been. Yeah. Tell me then, so that was the first time I remember you came on to propertyCEO, but tell me about, because I think people would be interested to hear, prior to coming on board with us, and we'll talk about your developments that you've completed, and maybe would be interested to find out what you've got coming up in the future. What was your background? What have you done? Where's Harvey Gora gone in his life?
Well, to start off, I think I've got to give it to my son because he's actually been part of our property journey from the start. Yeah, literally, and it's because of him that we probably actually started in property in the first place. But a bit of background. I think both my parents are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So you naturally fell into that.
Having sort of grown up, them running their business. I've been to university, but I think the best education is from parents, and it's about how to treat people. I think that's the one thing that stood out for me in terms of probably dealing with anything in life. How do you talk to people? How do you just communicate? How do you get what you want out of people? How do you, be a leader in some stages, and sometimes you're kind of more in the background facilitating. So all of these things I think I've learned over the years. So started off in the family business a long time ago.
Was that a textile business or fashion business?
Textile
if I remember?
manufacturer. Yeah, we used to make outerwear garments for all the high street stores. I think it was the first time I recall at the age of 25, my parents actually asked me for something.
Yeah.
And that's to help them in their business.
Wow.
Because things were tough.
Yeah.
And so joined the family business. Lo and behold, I think it was about 7 months into it. And I'm doing my exams for becoming an accountant. I was in finance previously. And they said, see you later, we're going to India for a few months. And I was like, hang on a minute. And
they're leaving the business for you to look after?
Exactly. Yeah, I've got exams going on. I've got things going on, you know. And so, yeah, off they went.
They went?
Yeah.
I like their style.
And, actually everything ran like clockwork. We'd have, the team were there for a long time, so it wasn't too difficult. But that business... moved on to the pet business, pet accessory business. So
because you were known as the dog bed man.
So the official title in the industry was the dog bed man.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember you told me that, and I was thinking, what are you talking about? But yeah, you were renowned for dog beds.
Absolutely.
We've got to know that story. We need to know that story.
So yes, sort of... started making...
Glamorise it. If it's not that glamorous, we need this to be glamorous.
Well, my dad sat on a machine one day using all the offcuts from fabric that had accumulated over 30 years. And he just made a dog bed, and it was sort of a bit wobbly and sort of falling down. And a lot of people laughed at it. But then he said to me, well, we can make dog beds. They're far easier than making jackets, complicated jackets with zips and all of that. And we can use up the fabric we've got. Wow. So that's where it all started.
And how did you become the dog bed man? Were you the biggest supplier of dog beds in the country?
Well, probably started off the smallest, but I'm based in Birmingham, so started... One thing I realised is everyone earns margins, but if I'm direct from manufacturer directly to retailer, it cuts out wholesalers, probably 2 or 3 wholesalers.
Yeah, interesting.
So I'd started directly going out to retailers in the local vicinity. Pretty much every shop I went to took our products. They didn't really have a choice because I offered it sale or return.
Yeah.
And
smart. Yeah,
and that
smart
just
move.
grew sort of, 50-mile radius, 100-mile radius, to pretty much within a few years, we were in every part of the UK and further afield.
And do you still make dog beds?
So the business itself, I came out of it, 12 years ago. My brother's still carrying on the business. It's still going strong 50 years on, and is probably one of the largest pet accessory retailers in the UK. So
would it be fair to say then, unfortunately, you are no longer known as the dog bed man, it's your brother?
Well, I don't know if
or
that
you still
title suits there. I think I still retain the title.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. And you say you're an accountant. I think you're a chartered management accountant, if I remember rightly. Yeah. But tell me about your property journey. So I can see the entrepreneurial side, but I believe when you came to us, if I remember rightly, back in 2021, you had buy-to-lets and HMOs. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So tell me a bit about how you got into that and what was your portfolio like? Perhaps you could describe.
Well, I left the pet business 12 odd years ago, and actually twiddled my thumbs for a year or two, thinking, what shall I do here? At the time, I realised apartments around Birmingham city centre were very reasonably priced for the rent that you get. I thought, okay, I've got some money. Let's buy some apartments in Birmingham city centre. Lo and behold, sort of 18 months, they're all gone up 50% in value. So this is back in 2013, 14, 15. And one of the things I realised, well, you can take an asset, leverage against it, and just buy more.
Yep.
Then in 2016, I thought, okay, prices have gone up. what do I do now? I decided to join Simon Zucchi, his mastermind, year-long mastermind course.
If you don't know, if you're interested in getting into buy-to-lets, HMO, Simon Zucchi, Property Investors Network, look him up. I mean, well respected, been in the industry doing
a long time,
training people a long time, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I gelled with the ethos. It was very grounded. I did that course that opened me up to doing service accommodation. We'd already got apartments in city centre, and I defined my area for HMOs just on the outskirts of Birmingham. Within a couple of 3 years, we more than doubled our portfolio. Running a number of HMOs and up to 6 apartments and service accommodation at one time, and that helped with cash flow. So again, going into sort of 2019, 2020, just before COVID, all the HMOs were set up. So I'd go in, go back to brick, completely refurb, extend, have en suites in them. My marketplace was always professionals.
Yep.
So pretty much once we finished a project, had it professionally photographed, I think within a week or two, they're all tenanted.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, we were always charging premium rent, but premium service that we gave and premium quality as well. So we'd kind of built up a very solid portfolio, earning us good rental income. And one of my objectives, sort of from that Simon Zucchi days, was to allow my wife, or give my wife the choice to give up her job.
She was, am I right to say she was a teacher?
Teacher of 20 plus years.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And actually, that was my drive. That was, okay, right, I've got to kind of get more income for myself and also replace hers.
You've got the properties that give you that income, and then you want to go to another level to get her out of that full-time job as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that when you made that transition to development? Just around that sort of time.
No, so we'd already got to that stage. She'd already given up her job, and developments just was a natural progression. We've done sort of refurbs, conversions into 6-bed HMOs, and going into developments. For some reason, developing a house into 4 flats seemed really big for me. We'd got planning permission back in 2020 for one of the properties, so that's what it led us on to actually upscaling and going into developments.
Did you see that development journey as a more complicated journey than what you've done to date? Then you saw that as something where you needed to get more support.
It was scary. For some reason, it wasn't much bigger than what we did previously, but it almost felt a lot more scary. Having your own utilities, dealing with planning now. Obviously, previously we didn't have to deal with planning issues, and just knowing what the spec is what I'm doing correct, or could I be doing it better? What's the cost of the whole thing going to be? How to get funding. So many things felt scarier.
And it's interesting. I suspect there'll be a lot of people that will be listening to this that have probably done that similar journey. They've gone up, they've done their buy-to-lets, maybe HMOs, maybe service departments, and people often perceive that as a very big step. I mean, reality often isn't, but of course you don't know what you don't know. And so, was that your decision then to actually go and get educated in that space? You'd done that previously, so you decided, right, I've got to get educated into the development space now. I guess that was the decision you made.
Absolutely. My wife always said to me that, look, in property, if you make a mistake, it can cost tens of thousands.
It's big numbers.
Yeah. So she was actually behind me, as in, right, okay, I think previous education helped us to get to where we were, but it wasn't developments, so now we need to. And I met yourself and Ian and the team, and I just gelled with the ethos, I think just the support that was there, and obviously signed up to propertyCEO to actually get educated. And I just literally parked the development. We had planning on it, and I just parked it until I kind of felt confident to move forward with it.
I do remember that. I remember you coming with the development, and then you subsequently went to complete that. It's interesting, just to take you back then, in terms of, it's always interesting why people choose to go on certain journeys and why they choose certain people to work with. It's fascinating. I always like to know. So the thing is, there's the ethos of how we operated, and that support, and that's some of the things you were looking for, I guess, in terms of that journey. You wanted someone that would be there with you. Any other reasons that you chose Property CEO?
Well, I didn't know at the time, but certainly the initial, and it was done online initially, the going through all the workbooks and the material, the content, literally on a week-to-week basis. And literally I stuck to 3 days a week doing, all I was doing was Property CEO.
Did you realise there was going to be as much work?
I didn't realise that, it was very thorough, very detailed. And I like going back to the books kind of thing, as in just, read to really think of all the different aspects of this business going forward, and then we had challenges to set up the website, to go through all the various, build our team and so forth. So literally we did the groundwork, the homework, and then the real learning started on the developer days, whereby we started to meet in person. And just having that support of, I remember asking about chimney breasts and what to do.
Was that about taking a chimney breast out? And you was, how do I take? Oh, you had some photographs, did you, of a chimney breast?
Well, yeah. I think you talked about it. We asked the structural engineer about it, and I think everybody in the room knew more about chimney breasts before and after. So, and I kept on going back to it, and it was, do we take the chimney breast out or not? Because it is a really long gable end wall, and what's the implications of that? So, so that support in the room kind of enable me to make the right decisions going forward.
I think support is always so important. An interesting one as well, just to take you back, I mean, you're a chartered management accountant, used to learning and education, love numbers. One of the things, and I know perhaps a lot of people might listen to this and think, oh, could I go back and do education? Because I don't think, we never try to hide the fact that actually you're going to go back and there's 100 or so modules, there's 8 weeks of intense education, and you can't skip that stuff. You've got to do it. It's very much, we often say it's like going back to an open university course, and there's some people go, I can't do it. Then don't bother. It's not for you. What would you say to someone, firstly, did you find that tough going back and then going back into an educational type environment? And what would you say to someone who might be listening to this thinking, I'm not sure I can do that again at my age?
I completely get it, because the thought of going into textbooks and learning stuff that you're never going to use in the real world just doesn't do anything. However, I knew I was going to do this project. We knew there were going to be further projects along the way. I found actually the fact that it was all listening and taking notes as opposed to reading was just far easier. And I thoroughly enjoyed those whole 8 weeks. I think I finished it in 7 weeks, by the way.
You after a prize?
No, I just enjoyed it. And I suppose if you know you're going to get value for something, you will put time and effort into it.
So you're at a different point in life, and you're absolutely right. It's a different way of learning. It's quite visual, but you can listen to it, but you haven't got to sit and read. Yeah, so it's more appropriate for us as adults to go and learn. And I get your point. Yeah, we all probably learnt trigonometry at school, didn't we? I mean, we ever used that? I can't remember what the damn stuff is. I mean, but this, you're right. You can use it. It's a future for you, for your wife, for your son, that you can go on and make a difference. Tell us about then this first project that you did. So you had this project in the wings. You then subsequently, with the skills that you acquired, went on to complete it. Could you describe that project to us?
So it's a 3-bed end terrace residential property. We've converted it into 4 flats.
Wow.
3 1-bedroom flats, 1 2-bedroom flats. We've got the original planning application for that. There were some minor amends we made along the way in terms of the way the roof line went and things like that. And going back to the learnings, there was a module for what to do at each stage and the rebus stages of development, and it's coming back to me now a little bit.
It's coming back to you. It should be ingrained in you. If you don't know, rebus stages, the Royal Institute of British Architecture stages, which I could test Harvey on, but I won't. I'll spare you that today.
Yeah. So I think I spent more time in planning than actually once the project had started, and making sure we'd ticked off everything we need to tick off. I'd already got a decent team, I'd say, around me. Touchwood, a very good builder who'd done sort of 7-8 projects for me prior to that. But ensuring that sort of all the structural calculations were done. Took on board one of the companies that I think part of propertyCEO as well.
So you use one of the professional consultants that we bring into the room?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
And I think the guy came down from Oxford. He was so thorough. It was unbelievable. And there was a few sort of moments where, like, literally 4:00 on a Friday afternoon, I'd be like, right, okay, I'm not sure what's gone wrong, but the staircase is not going to fit.
Yeah.
And just being able to pick up the phone, talk to him and saying, okay, well, if it's single skin wall, we'd have to do something. Luckily, it was a double skin wall, so it didn't have too much of an implication. Somehow, hook or by crook, we managed to fit the staircase in. Had another architect sort of rework that little bit out just to make sure. And then when it was made, it was like, oh, there's loads of room here.
Yeah.
So overall, the whole project went very well.
Yeah.
And I think it was due to the planning, thinking about all the things that could potentially go wrong.
Planning the processes, you mean? Yeah. The processes that you plan through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. What would you say in that journey then you've been on, this transition from landlord, if I could say that, to developer now, and the education you had to go through? So whether the challenge was in the education or the process, what's the biggest challenge you could look back on to say, when you got into this, that was a tough challenge to learn or to get over?
One of the things I realised is, in terms of professional team, don't have just one architect around you, maybe 2 or 3. Don't have one structural engineer around you, have 2 or 3. Because one would say one thing and somebody else would say something else. And my test was then go back to propertyCEO and see what they had to say. And,
So you were testing us all the time, were you?
And whoever kind of came out as, I suppose, consensus, I'd go with that. So it's a challenge in itself to kind of take on board what somebody says who's a professional, and then almost somebody else who's equally a professional says something else. So who's right?
Always difference of opinions, yeah.
And actually working out, well, if I then look at it, backwards, value engineer it. So I didn't really know what value engineering meant prior to the coming on the propertyCEO, but I really embraced it.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Because I just put it back to my professionals. I said, okay, well, you're saying do this. Well, how much is that potentially going to cost more?
Yeah.
Then they had to think about it a bit more.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this actually do the same objective and cost less? And somebody had to give in one way or another. And that paved the way forward.
This is about being a CEO. You might not know what value engineering is, and I'm not going to attempt to explain it to you today, but it's about being a chief executive officer, running a business at a high level, and really empowering and pushing and making accountable your design team to deliver what you want, not what they think they want, particularly in terms of cost, isn't it, this value engineering?
Yeah.
Well, compared to buy-to-lets, again, a lot of people, I just want to really get some useful information for people that are listening to this. 3 key things where you see the world's different in development from buy-to-let HMOs?
Well, I think the world we're in at the right now, buy-to-let is getting more and more difficult.
Yeah.
For people who bought 20, 30, 10 years ago, it's a completely different ball game to get the numbers to add up and to get a decent mortgage on things now. And then there's all the challenges of changing the legislation and so forth. so for me, it was more of a natural progression moving from landlord to developer. I suppose it's also gives us the choice of, we tend to look at one project at any one time rather than doing multiple projects. But it just gives us, I dived into that project. I was working very hard for 6 months, but then I've taken the next 6 months off.
So that project's have you retained that project?
We've retained it, and
it's enabled you to do that. A lot of people will choose to sell their projects, and equally, you could get a lump of cash and take some time off. So yeah, it's got that ability to have those sort of time, which is, people want that time freedom, always in life. So other differences that you see on that journey, and that's a big difference, that ability to stop and start. Any other differences you see between these two business models?
Well, certainly the potential. In terms of scalability, for me, I've made 4 flats. I'm looking at a project, potentially 14 units.
So this is a current project now, is it?
Yeah, that's we're kind of just trying to secure something right now, so I'm not going to divulge too much.
And the address was?
And
where is it?
It's up north somewhere.
Yeah, you're not going to tell you anything. I don't blame him. Keep it to yourself. Yeah.
So for me, almost making 4 flats units, or 14 or 40, it doesn't feel as scary anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. And it's interesting. We spoke briefly earlier as well, just before we came on into the studio and recorded, is that you're still dipping in and out at the Developers Club.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I would say, a lot of the best students do. It's coming back in. It's continuing, often getting that support, somewhere where you can ask a question. And so pretty much whatever you could do now, it's not going to be scary.
So yeah, after I finished that development off, I think I wasn't coming to Developers Club for a good sort of 6-8 months. Took a bit of time off. Plan to get back into a bit more routine now, because I think the people there support and elevate you as well.
Just with the rest of the students.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so I need a bit of a sort of I suppose kick up that just to get back into it, just to kind of see what other people are doing. You'll always learn from what people around you are doing, what's working, what's not.
They just inspire you, don't they?
Absolutely.
Just inspire and give you. I feel, I'm in a position now where I've retired from development, but I've spent most of my time really in propertyCEO in terms of the time that I do work, and I feel inspired every time I go in that room, and I feel so privileged to have a little bit of influence on people's lives to help change those lives a bit. So it is a really inspiring environment. So going forward then, more developments?
So one of the things, going back to buy-to-lets, we're using developments as a means of just earning nice lump sums.
Yes.
So, we plan to do one every year or every other year, nice lump sum. Effectively, they'll pay off some of our buy-to-let mortgages.
So you're going to take the lump sums to pay off the buy-to-let mortgages, so you get more passive income.
Exactly.
Wow.
So the plan is in 10 years' time, literally to pay off all our mortgages, and using those lump sums to do so from development.
I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back to 2021. Do you remember? I asked you what success would look like for you. Do you remember what you wrote? Shall I read some of it now?
Now you're testing me.
It's interesting. So the first thing you wrote, and actually this is interesting, and we actually talked about this earlier, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but that you had some key values, 5 key values that you said were important to you. And I thought I'd bring these up today because I think these are, I like them. I really like them. They resonate. And I think something you talked about right at the beginning about engaging with people, being a people person. Honesty, that was one of your key values. And I think that's so important is if you go out there and you get into property development and you are honest, and there are a lot of dishonest people, the world will work for you. So I like that one. Fairness goes hand in hand. Trust, positivity. Now, hopefully today, one of the reasons I wanted to interview Harvey today was to give you some positivity. So hopefully that's rubbing off. But you are a very positive person. You've got that sort of can-do attitude. back in the day, you probably got off your father, as you say, the dog bed man. That was a positive attitude. And authenticity. Authenticity. Yeah. Do you remember which your top one was? If you only had to choose one, which one it would be?
I think honesty there. I mean, example of that is this morning.
No, you're wrong. It's not what you said.
Oh, is it not? Okay.
No, it's not what you said.
Okay.
You said, if I had to choose just one, it would be positivity.
Okay.
That's what you said.
Okay.
You actually made a statement, and I hopefully, again, you don't mind sharing, what success would be for you. Do you remember what success looked like for you?
No, I think you're going to have to remind me there.
Can I read this? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Success, and because I just thought this would be interesting to share, because when I look back up at these notes, and I just thought, and I appreciate Harvey letting us share this, this will resonate with some people out there, because I hear this story a lot. And you actually talked about your journey, and you talked about your parents. And I love the fact that they disappeared off to India and let you run it. So this is quite pertinent. It says, success is knowing my parents are proud of me. Okay, yeah, very true. That's good, isn't it? And I know a lot of people will be thinking exactly the same. That is, a lot of people come to me and say, it's about my parents, my father, my mother, knowing I've done well. Success, the second thing, is knowing my family are happy. And interesting, you talked about family, and I know you're a big family person. We talked about your son being on screen, and you very kindly invited me to an event. I went to an event with you and your wife once. That was really, really nice. And success is growing in my personal and spiritual journey. I love those three things. So that was growing for you. Are your parents proud of you?
Absolutely are.
Are your family happy?
Very.
Have you grown personally and spiritually?
Very much so.
Excellent. So you've done a lot of those things. You have one big goal as well. I'm going to come to that in a minute, because I'm going to come back to that, because I thought this was a big goal. You probably remember it. But before I do that goal, what's the biggest single thing that has contributed to your success now as a developer? One big thing.
I will reiterate honesty. And I'll give you an example. This morning, I spoke to my builder. There's a few little jobs to be done. Literally, he's busy, and I said, look, I need a price before I say yes for you to get on with the work. He goes, okay, well, it's going to take 4 guys, 2 days each to do that. That's the X amount. The materials is going to cost this, that, the other, and I'd itemized it, listed it, and I was like, okay, that is very reasonable. Yeah, and just verbally, I've said to order the stuff, and that's give or take, that's the price. And so my relationship with my builder, for example, he's always been honest. And you can work with that. Yeah. And when there's an issue, we've always solved it. If there's extra work to be done, we've always sort of addressed it and moved forward. I think knowing that, he knows I'm honest, knowing that he's honest, it just enables that relationship just to flourish. And it's that's the one thing. Yeah. That's the one thing. It's hard to find an honest builder in this day and age.
Can I actually? You've made me think of. I've got a picture somewhere. I'd love to share it. I don't know if I can find it. We'll cut it into this video. But I saw a van down in a local town near me, and on the side it was said "The Honest Builder." And I thought, well, that's great, isn't it? But I was going to make the point is you can tell people you're honest, but you have to demonstrate it, and the way you've done that is demonstrating it. Do you remember your big goal that you wanted to do? Your big world goal.
Yeah, sort of whether it's setting up a charity, but trying to support those children that are really struggling to even feed themselves on a daily basis.
Eradicate child poverty is what you put globally. I mean, big, bold goal. Some people might think, what? But hey, look, you've got to have a goal. You've got to shoot for it. Even if you only got 10% there, how cool would that be?
Yeah. It'd make a big difference to the world.
Difference. Yeah. I think you get there. I think you would definitely get it. I think you will make a big difference in that. It's been a pleasure having you in here today. If people want to contact you, people almost certainly might want to reach out, connect up, maybe have a coffee, maybe talk about your journey. What's the best way to contact you?
So you can reach out to me on my website, Harvey Gora, propertydoctorsinc.co.uk. You've got all my details there. We'll put those details in the notes so people can pick up on that. Thank you. Harvey, thank you for coming in today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for sparing the time. Hopefully that's inspired a few people. Hope so.
What do you think? Is that interesting? The dog bed man, look at him now. He's out there doing stuff. And honesty, positivity. I mean, he said honesty, but I think it's positivity. I think that's what he really meant. But actually put those two together, honest and being positive. It's super, super effective. It can take you a long, long way. And you always know where you stand with people like that, and people know where they stand with you. So look, if you're out there, if you're interested, take a leaf out of Harvey's book, get inspired. He still, to this day, is getting inspired, getting back into our developers club here and getting other people to inspire him on his journey. Hopefully it helps you. Hopefully you've got something out of that today. Please like and subscribe, and then you'll never miss another episode. See you soon.